So welcome back, everybody. My name's Andrew and you're watching the Kelley's Country Life. So today is a big day. It's a day I've been looking forward to for a while and I'm ready to get behind me. So we've started putting siding on the side of the house, but that's not what this episode's about. The reason we have went ahead and slapped this much siding up and I have painted this area is because of those two holes right there. We have run underground electrical all the way from the power pole, and in order to finish up our electrical system and get a rough end inspection for all the work that I've been doing over the last many weeks, I've got to put a meter box here, I have got to ground the main panel, and I've got to install my sub panel outside. So that's what this episode's about. We're going to start knocking this stuff out right here, because in just 2 days I have got a laundry list of inspections set up with the inspector. Fingers crossed I passed them, because this is my first house ever, my first time ever doing any of this type of stuff in this much detail. I don't have a clue what to expect. I've tried to read the codes, I've tried to listen to y'all, try to do what I think is correct, but we're going to find out. So let's button this up, get everything rough end wired up, and I'll explain some other stuff going on over here. We're not going to be able to finish one small thing today because I have got to go to a major hardware store tomorrow to try to wrap this up. All right, so what I'm doing here is getting my meter panel and my outdoor sub panel set up for all this to work together. So as far as the meter panel goes, it'll mount on the outside. You'll have your main service entrance cable come in from the power pole, which I will not pull. The power company will pull after the inspector gives the okay and inspects everything. But what I'll do today is hook wires from this up to my main panel, have everything ready with the exception of that one wire coming in from the outside. But I have to go ahead and run the tube, the conduit, have everything ready to go. Now as far as my sub panel goes, I need to set up some stuff on the bench with it. Because a sub panel requires separation of grounds and neutrals per code, I had to purchase an extra ground bar. And inside this panel, you saw these little gray stickers. You can remove them and find the 2 screw holes on the back that this lines up with, and you have to mount this actually to the panel. It comes with the screws and all. Like I said, I had to purchase this separate because code does require that your first means of disconnect, which will be my main breaker panel, you actually bond the grounds and neutrals. So this is your neutral bar here. It'll have a ground hooked up to it, and on the main panel you hook all your grounds and neutrals up on the same bar. That's perfectly normal. Anything after a main panel, any kind of sub panel, second, third, fourth panel, whatever that is, you always have to separate your grounds and neutrals. So make for sure when you buy a sub panel, if you install one, you've got you an extra ground bar, or you will fail if you get an inspection. So I'm going to get this ground bar mounted in here, and we'll go get all this on the wall and kind of start getting everything set up, eyeballed, and figure out how we're going to run stuff in and out of the house. Alright, so now is the time to get our boxes set up and figure out where we're going to put our mounting holes at. Huh, nailed it. Alright, so as you can see, I went ahead and painted this yesterday. A lot of people throw the boxes up on here and never paint beforehand. That paint gives you an extra layer of protection for this material, and now I don't have to make a mess whenever it comes time to actually paint the house, because I've already got the color on here that we know that we want. I can actually take my spray gun and put something up next to the box, piece of cardboard, one of those little spray protectors, and move on and not coat everything. Alright, so I'm going to use a masonry bit and put this on hammer drill function for concrete. Bust through this because there's no point in trying to put standard screws to this stuff. It just chips, breaks, and kind of wants to crack it. What I'm more concerned with getting to is the wood that's back behind here. So all I'm doing is just poking through the fiber cement board where I just made my screw hole marks, and we'll shoot some screws into that wood to really hold these boxes on. All right, so this is not the time to cheap out and put an old drywall screw in here to hold your boxes on. These things are important, and eventually those screws are going to rust out. I'm planning on this being our forever home, so I might as well spend a few extra cents, went out and bought stainless steel screws that are a little thicker than a drywall screw, but most importantly, they're not going to rust on me. And these should hold the box here forever. All right, so I'm going to put a really good dab of silicone. This is not a place where you want caulk. You want silicone, something that's going to be long lasting and give over all these holes. And I'm going to put some around each of these tubes right here that's coming out. But I have already flashed these in with rubber flashing, so there's no way this is going to leak. All right, so right now I'm putting in conduit and pulling my 10 gauge wire through that I ran over to our pumping well. So one of the main reasons I wanted to install an outdoor sub panel, well, a couple reasons. One, I really wanted to free up spaces inside on the main panel for any future add-ons. And two, I love the outdoor flexibility that an outdoor panel gives me. So anytime I need to pull the wire, say to an above ground pool that we're thinking about putting in, all I've got to do is do one of these knockouts, run a nice piece of conduit down, do UF burial wire that's allowed to be buried straight under the ground, and run out to anywhere I need to. Say if I need to put another outdoor outlet, whatever I need. Plus, for example, speaking of that, I have an outdoor outlet right here, GFI protected. I have to have this per code within 25 feet of anywhere an HVAC system is going to be installed. And it just so happens right here is where my outdoor unit is going to be. They need to have a plug-in to be able to service equipment. So 110 volt has to be somewhere in the area for the HVAC technicians. So an outdoor sub panel gives me a lot of flexibility for the things that I need out here. Now this right here has been some of the hardest stuff on the planet for me to find. Service entrance cable. Jacketed service entrance cable. I'm taking conduit out inside because apparently some boxes that I have are not allowed inside of a wall, but you can run jacketed cable through a wall without conduit. This has been difficult to find, but I finally found some today at a specialty store. So I'm going to strip the jacket back off of this. This is what's going to feed our panel in here. We'll go ahead and get that hooked up as far as rough end goes, and then close this up, move on over to the meter box. So the nice thing about this service entrance cable right here, it comes with all the conductors that I need. If you buy wire individually, one, you'll have to run it in a conduit, and two, it usually does not come with a ground. So what this comes with is a black hot, a red stripe for our other hot, so that's two 120 volt legs or 240 that we're running out here, our ground that we'll need, and our neutral, our common neutral. So technically what you have is two 120s sharing a common neutral, and then that can either be combined for our 240 out here or any 120 volt outlets that we want to run. Now this is aluminum service entrance cable. It's been just about impossible for me to find any copper wiring around here lately other than the very small stuff. Now aluminum wire is also what the power company is going to pull from the pole all the way over to the meter box. Aluminum wire is also what I'm running inside. Now the only problem with aluminum is it doesn't tend to conduct as well as copper, so typically you go with a larger size. Now one drawback to aluminum wire is oxidation. We've all seen older aluminum that gets that oxidation on the outside. That can cause connectivity issues in the box. So anytime I hook up aluminum wire, I use some of this anti-ox gel right here. So you just coat the wire on here before you put it in there, and this stuff keeps it from oxidizing and makes a good electrical contact. All right, so now I have my box just loosely screwed in because the conduit that's coming out of the ground that we ran a while back from my main service entrance cable right here, I've got to run the tube up to this and get it set up for the power company. All right, now for the not so fun part. Working with some of the stiffest wire on the planet right here and having to make very tight bends to hook it up. This is where the meter can will go in. So the power company will pull power through here, hook up on this side, nice and straight, easy for them, the way the box is set up. Then that sends power over to these top two lugs. Once the meter is stuck in, that's what transfers the power down to these lugs that I'll be hooking up to right here. I hate this part. Oh, I hate this part. This wire is so stiff. All right, so here's where I'm going to ground the system, and I'll be the first to admit the grounding is extremely difficult to understand in the National Electric Code. I looked on a lot of forums, and if you look at different parts of the country, everybody seems to be grounding slightly different. So take this with a grain of salt. You need to talk to your local building department. Sadly, mine is closed today, so I can't ask them, but this is a very easy thing to fix if it's found in my rough-in inspection it's not correct. So what I'm going to do, there is a grounding bar out here that's also right beside the neutral lug on the meter box. And a lot of people online seem to put their first ground, the ground that we're going to put grounding rods in right there. Someone I talked to locally said, go ahead and tie this ground in that same lug that'll go in and feed the main panel. Now keep in mind the main panel, because it's my first means of disconnect, because it's right behind this. I'm going to put the bonding screw in, which bonds neutrals and grounds. So technically you probably don't need this because the bonding screw is already doing what running this wire is in there. But I can't foresee this hurting. It's giving me an extra connection, an extra ground in there, an extra path to ground, which is safe. But again, if the inspector says, no, you need to either ground here or there, it's a very, very simple change, something we'll do. Now, I like to run my ground through a piece of conduit because it looks cleaner going up the wall. And never mind this super crooked conduit that I have right here that's driving my OCD crazy. I thought I ditch switched and had everything lined up good. Apparently I did not. Now also, anytime you hook up any large servicing wires like this, you have to put on these bushings right here because they have a nice rounded over edge that keeps these big, thick, hard to bend wires from chafing. All right, so next we have to ground the system. So we have to take these 8-foot grounding rods, put them all the way into the ground to give a direct path to ground. And we are required to put in 2 rods, a minimum of 6 foot apart along the same run of copper cable here. Further is okay, but you cannot be any closer due to resistance issues. So I'm going to pound my first one down right here, and then we'll connect the wire to this, go down at least 6 more feet, pound another rod down, connect the same wire to that rod as well. All right, so I've got my second rod in and the wire connected to it and run through a trench right here. Always leave your ground rods exposed because most inspectors are going to want to see and measure the distance between them. All right, so I'm pretty much done with the outside. I got a ground rod in here, wire run under the dirt, another ground rod there, run up through this tube, and I am grounded and bonded to the neutral strap in here. So what these 2 wires are, you've got 2 big black wires. That's your 2 120 volt lines going in to feed the main breaker panel, or 240 volts. Then you got your big neutral lug that goes inside as well and feeds the neutral on your main panel. So coming up out of this tube, the power company will run me a neutral line from the transformer, 2 hots. When they put the meter end, which has 4 snap-in prongs right here. That's what feeds the power to the inside. And this is locked up. I got my rope right here run all the way through the tube, underground, out to the pole. Now, as far as my sub panel goes, it's hooked up, ready to go. I've got my, again, 120 line in here, another 120 line in here for a total of 240. This is going to feed off of a 100 amp breaker off my main panel inside. I've got my neutral that's going to feed off the main panel, and ultimately all this is truly feeding off of this. And I've got my ground hooked up. Now, because this is a sub panel, I've got a neutral bar and I have a grounding bar. I had to purchase this separate. The National Electric Code says anytime you do a sub panel after your first means of disconnect, you have to separate grounds and your neutrals right there. So that's what we're going to do in order to meet code. Okay, so what I have done is actually removed all the conduit for the last wire that I had going to the sub panel, run this service entrance wire through, and used a big cable clamp to hold it in the back side of the panel, since that is required. We've also got our main wires coming in from our meter panel outside, as you just seen, and I've pulled all my circuit wires out of the way because we don't connect these till after we get the thumbs up from the inspector. But what we do go ahead and connect is our main service cables right here. So we'll go ahead and strip back and have everything ready for the sub panel, and go ahead and connect all these main power wires to these top lugs up here on the main panel. I find this tool so useful now. Obviously, I don't have any wire cutters to cut a wire this big, so this multi-tool is awesome. All right, so we are officially hooked up. Like I said, there's still a couple of questions. We'll, by the time you're all watching this video, I will already have met with the inspector. We'll pass along his findings. But for example, for the sub panel that's hooked up outside, I've got my 100 amp breaker in to serve. It's a 125 amp box, so well within limit there. My 2 hots are hooked up. I may not be allowed to go ahead and connect to a breaker in rough-in inspection, so I'll just leave a screwdriver out there, and if the inspector's not happy with this, just pull the 2 wires back out and leave them loose like everything else in there. No big deal. But I figure since I'm already hooking up power to this panel, I probably should be supplying it to the other panel, or at least just having everything looking like it's hooked up, but we'll find out. Now also from the sub panel, you can see I've got that bonding block in right there that hooks to the neutral, and then I've got my ground wire also hooked up to this neutral bar. And again, they are both bonded, as in ground and neutral together, because what you can't see behind that wire is my green bonding screw is installed, connecting to the neutral and ground that's grounded outside. All right, so one last big thing to do. It's not difficult, it's just a lot to do. All these panels right here, I've got to strip back everything, make sure they're labeled. I'm gonna do it the same way I did over there, and connect all my grounds together. It's my understanding that all the grounds have to be together, wire stripped, neatly put in the box, before you can pass rough-in inspection. So looking around, oh, that's a lot of boxes. I'm gonna go eat lunch, then we're gonna get with this. All right, now something that I have got is actual grounding twist lock nuts right here. And what's special about these green, they show that they're for grounding, but they have a hole through the end, so you can actually leave one wire out. Now that's going to be critical because once I twist all my grounds together, these are light switch boxes, for example, so I'll still need a ground to go to the light switch itself. So I can leave one sticking all the way out that I can either hook to the switch, or in the case of having multiple switches, I can make a pigtail later down the road, jump off this single one that's out, and start daisy chaining to all my light switches. Now, you got to read on the back of these bags here. This says, this is all 14 gauge wire here. It says I can do up to 4 14 gauges in these. You need to look at what your wire nuts say. They make all different colors, all different sizes, and different size wires that they can put together. Now over in this box, I'll have way too many to use one wire nut, so I'll actually have to make a pigtail off and double these grounds up, and then leave another pigtail out to later go back and jumper to, looks like 4 switches that'll be in this box right here. Now they make actual wire strippers. Some people use razor knives. I've got a pair of small Klein pliers that I use for all my 12-volt wiring, but it's got a small cutter right in here, and I find that it works perfect on just barely cutting into that sheathing right there, and you can pop it right off, no problem. So now that there's my label, I'll just go ahead, trim that up, and we'll use this to put back on our wire to hold them together so we know what wire's what. And I'm only going to try to work with one wire at a time so I don't wind up losing where it runs to. There's no point wasting time having to backtrack all these. All right, so I'll bend this ground out of the way. That way I can go ahead and get my label back on there. I'll slide it all the way to the back, and I am done with those wires for this stage. All right, now as far as my grounds go, you can go ahead and pre-twist them. This is where I like a set of lineman's pliers. I'm just gonna grab them back down here, still leave me some room to tuck, and just do a quick little pre-twist down here, not wanting to get it super tight. And then what I'll do is leave one wire and snip the other ones off. Now save these, you can actually make pigtails with these. Go ahead and give that a little more twist. So now that we've left that one long wire, here's what's awesome about this wire nut. It slides right down over the other grounds. Get those nice and twisted. And this one also has the wings on there, which makes it really easy to grab by hand. All right, so now those wires are twisted together. We still have us one ground sticking out for a pigtail, or if you had a single light, that would be awesome. It'd go right to it. But I can daisy chain off to 2 other light switches later if I want. Add another wire nut, add another wire, and make this as big as I need to. So from my understanding for rough and electrical, this box is done. We have all 3 wires together. Go ahead and tuck this back in the box. And we have our labels on these wires. We'll get everything in nice and deep because we're gonna have sheetrockers coming here before long, and whenever they go to cut this out with their little rotary tool, if your wires are sticking close to the edge of the boxes, they can actually cut and damage your wire. And if you don't have service loops, which I don't on a lot of this stuff, you don't have extra wire to pull in. So you wanna make for sure everything sits nice and deep in the box so it's not damaged. Okay, so I'll be the first to admit, I severely underestimated electrical. Oh, my goodness. Nothing about it was overly complicated, don't get me wrong. It took 5 times as long as I've ever expected it to take. And plumbing, for example, that I thought would take forever, knocked it out in 2 or 3 days. So some things you get in your head are gonna be quick, they're not. So, like I said, nothing about this was crazy. I have all the lights, everything stripped, and I forgot to show y'all one more thing. Special boxes, metal boxes right here, but we're done. So, for example, all the metal boxes in the house, there's only like 6 of them for, you know, fans, lamps, things like that. You have to make sure you bond or ground the metal box itself. So if something were to ever short out in here, you couldn't touch the metal box, electrocute yourself. You've got the box grounded, so, well, your short has a direct path to ground right there. So I've had to do all that as well. Inspector will check. That's why it's got everything loose. But I have been out here on the man lift, stripping wires, tucking. We have all grounds together. Panel is ready. Check this out. I started with an empty 5-gallon bucket. That is how much I had to strip off right there and take care of. Holy moly. This has been a heck of a process. So, inspection is actually tomorrow. By the time y'all watch this, too late. It's over with. There's one more thing I'm going to do on the next episode because it's going to be a big involved episode. So people ask from time to time, anytime you cut through a top plate like this or drill through the floor over there, you have to do what's called fire block foam seal. And I'm going to cover that on the next episode because we're going to have a whole episode dedicated to just foam sealing and sealing the house up because I got something really cool to do that with. So yes, I'm actually about to start that episode and it'll go over a couple days, but I will fill all this cavity in right here and holes like that with this fire block foam seal. I've also got to go do it around all the plumbing I cut through as well. So for example, any gaps and holes like this over here. And that's because you're blocking, especially your top plates, act as a draft control for fires. And you can't have leaks, air leaks around there for them to actually pull draft up there and feed a fire. So that's what I'm about to start on right now. I've got a lot of that to do, but who cares? Regardless, electrical is actually, it's done. Outside's ready to go. Everything's roughed in, everything's stripped, tucked back. Wow, what a job. You electricians, y'all earn your money. I'll give you that. Holy moly, there's a lot to it. So I'm out here pressure testing pipes. I've got my vent line filled up again. I went ahead and bumped my pressure lines, water lines up to 80 psi. They've been sitting for hours. No leak down there. I'm gonna let them sit overnight at 80 psi because the inspector comes in the morning. Fingers crossed, everything goes good. So I'll have y'all an episode out in a couple of days of whatever he finds, how things go. I pray it's nothing major or no major tear outs. You just don't never know until he gets here. So thank y'all so much for all the support, everybody that's reached out and helped me get to this point. What this feels like for me right here is midterms. I feel like I've been at college learning for the last few months, studying, preparing. Here's midterms. Hopefully I pass my midterms because now we have to work toward finals or I guess my house degree. So that's kind of the way all this stuff is feeling right here. Let me shut up. I've got to actually go get ready for y'all's live stream that's coming up here because this is Sunday afternoon. I'm getting tired of working 6 and 7 days a week. I'm ready for a day off. Ready for a day off. It's coming. If I pass this rough end, I'm taking me a day or two off. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.